Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
What a save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Niko leaves absolutely no doubt. The Sounders rule the region. Seattle Sounders is campeón. It's gone! It's gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
And Portland can't say shit.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Overcome seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. It's Friday. We are here at Sounders Training with Niko. This is what we learned this week. Niko, how are you doing?
I feel exhausted, man. We've been doing a lot of work. It's been almost emotionally draining. I feel like the Sounders have, and this is, I said this yesterday on Soccer Down Here, where, you know, it's always great when there's things to write about and there's things to, you know, provide content on. But it is kind of a, you know, roller coaster of emotions. Like, it was really good because the Sounders were on a great streak. Now there's some conflict and some controversy, goes back and forth. So, man, I'm a little tired. But you know what? It is a beautiful Friday. It's sunny.
It is beautiful.
I got some nice energy. Sparkling ice.
Speaking of sparkling ice, if they want to call us up and sponsor the show, we'll talk about
Absolutely.
or Talking Rain, I should say.
Yep.
Yeah, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I have no idea. But what we're trying to say is that I needed an energy drink because it has been an exhausting.
Kind of an exhausting.
Yeah, it's been a lot of stuff going on. And I'm sure that our listeners enjoy the amount of content, but man, it's a lot.
Well, let's start with the source of a lot of that content. You know, this was a story that I guess what I've been saying all along is, man, I really hope the next story I write about this is, okay, there's a deal and we can move on. It's Friday. We are a week away from the start of the Club World Cup, and as of now, there is still no new offer from MLS to the MLS Players Union or Players Association about a better share of the Club World Cup prize pool. When the sound, and this has kind of been a illustration of why the players, I think, are so frustrated, is on Sunday when they went public. They had already gone public, frankly. Like, this was, but they had gone public in the most public way, and they wore the shirts of protest, and then they had the post-game thing. Their frustration was mainly that MLS keeps telling them an offer is coming. They've been doing this for weeks, and no offer materializes, and it starts to feel like they're just running out the clock on the whole thing. And yet here we are on Friday, and, you know, as recently as Tuesday, I think I was told, oh yeah, they might get an offer tomorrow from people actually in the league, and there's no offer.
Everything that we've learned is that the players have had every they've made every attempt to talk to the league by sending letters, by doing this on the private side, and to the comment that you just made, yeah, they had to be as impactful as they could be, and they did it in a way that some people might find unorthodox, some people might find like it's a distraction away from, you know, the task at hand, which on Sunday was beating Minnesota. But the reality is that had they not done this, I don't know if we would be this far along in what has gone on, what we've heard. I mean, even Steph yesterday said, look, it feels like we did the job, like that we wanted to get our voice heard, and we feel like it happened.
It's been heard.
And, we have done our job at amplifying that.
And I will say that to the degree that they wanted this, because I don't know if the story had gained that much traction before Sunday, it's now everywhere. Every major outlet is talking about it, and I want to give you your fair share of the credit. You and I both reported out this story about Adrian Hanauer lighting up the locker room, and that really seems to be the hook, frankly, that has set this sort of story, given this a big boost, where it went from being like, oh, I guess the players are upset, to like, oh no, here's like a juicy news hook that can drive this news cycle.
100%. And in reality, I mean, you and I understand that this is not a necessarily straightforward, directly a club player situation. Right. It's a league player.
It's really, and I think that's one thing that's become very clear, is that it's not as simple as one owner saying, I want to give more money to my players. It's the whole league, whether or not legally it has to be that way, that's the way that it's going to work.
Right.
The whole league needs to make an agreement with the whole Players Association, and that's just the mechanics of how this thing is going to work. And it's become very clear that the league is negotiating, the players union is negotiating. Could the two sides could the Sounders players and Adrian have maybe had some, detente in between? Sure, but that wasn't going to make a deal happen. The deal has to happen at the league and Players Association level. Absolutely.
And because of that, again, I am with the players in, I don't know about the design of the shirt and everything how it came off, but the job got done. And that is something that you have to credit the players for. And then when it comes to the Adrian and players relationship, he was collateral damage in a way of that mission, in terms of what he felt, because
but it was not targeted.
It was not targeted toward him. No, absolutely not.
The Sounders have been very clear that they weren't trying to call out Adrian.
Nope.
Even if Adrian felt called out or embarrassed or whatever, but.
And that's why I call it collateral damage. And I was on Q13 yesterday, and I said, look, what I want to make sure is to clarify that this is out of character for Adrian. And Adrian is a nice guy. Both you and I have known him for many years. And I believe that this was an impulsive, bad decision, because just because this is out of character doesn't mean that it's okay. But that impulsiveness does come from a guy that has put a lot into this club, that cares a lot, that's here, I believe, in most practices that most owners in this league.
I guarantee he watches more training sessions than any other owner in the league.
Exactly. So because of that, all that emotion, and I said this, is a human emotion to feel that way, and he just allowed that to impulsive into making a really bad decision. So I appreciate you for being courageous enough to put that out there, and the reporting, we both knew that we had to do our due diligence, and
you'll notice no one has questioned the reporting.
No.
Not even like coyly. Everyone sort of acknowledged that the reporting is accurate. Basically, like every other story that you and I have reported together. That's the whether or not people want that news out there. The truth is that when you and I report stuff, you almost always like ironclad. Like, we might not have every detail, but the broad strokes of it are solid. And in this case in particular, no one has questioned even anything. I mean, I think we were appropriately vague about what actually happened.
Yep.
But in any case, one of the other interesting things that's come up this week, and I've spent a fair amount of time talking to both people at the league level and at the Players Association level, is there is an element of this story that has not really been reported, I don't think, anywhere else. And I actually have finally received what I would call like very firm confirmation that this is true. I have also confirmed it with other sources that this is accurate. But one of the reasons that the players felt so strongly about their ability to make these kinds of demands or expectations that the league would even hear them out, because I've heard plenty of people say, like, look, you have a CBA, what do you want? Like, it's on paper, this is the deal. Well, part of the problem, part of the issue is that there is a very recent example of the league doing exactly that. And if you remember back in 2023, CONCACAF expanded the Club World or the Champions Cup, and with that they also put a big boost of prize money. All of a sudden, the winning team could get $5 million. I think before that it was like $1 million or something like that. So it was a huge prize pool difference. Well, at the same time, the league came to the players' union and said, "Look, we want to incentivize you to win this thing." And so what they did is they basically drew up a new deal where previously MLS when the Sounders won Champions League back in 2022, I think they got like 400 or 500,000, the players did. And that's spelled out in the CBA. Well, after they expanded the prize pool, the league, I don't know who came to who, but they came to an agreement, essentially a side agreement, that lays out a very different payment calendar. And so the Whitecaps were able to get about $850,000 in bonuses just from getting to the finals. If they had won the finals, they would have gotten like about almost 2.5 million, which I don't have to tell you is a lot more than 1 million for playing in the Club World Cup. So point being, there's precedence for this kind of change, and there's every reason that the players should expect some movement on this deal. And frankly, the league understands very acutely that one way to motivate the players to do well in this tournament is to give them a cut of the performance bonuses. So I don't really understand what they're dragging their feet over.
That's really the situation that I find hard to understand. This is currently a lose-lose for the league, because in the court of public opinion, they look like shit.
They look like they're being cheap for no reason. They look like they're being cheap for no reason. It really taints the excitement of... We should be all week. What have we been talking about all week? We've been talking about this issue.
It's compensation.
There is a huge game against the Whitecaps coming up. Mm-hmm. We've barely talked about that. Mm-hmm. There is a massive tournament a week from that. We have barely scratched the surface talking about that. And it's because of this compensation issue.
Absolutely. And it's something that is only going to get worse, according to what I've been hearing, because LAFC apparently is full on board on if there are no changes, there's going to be some repercussions on their end. And Miami is the only one that's the domino that hasn't fallen completely. But regardless of, it is clear that if what you're telling me is true, which I do not doubt, then the league is basically kicking the can on the road when the result is going to be the same, and in the meantime they're damaging their own brand.
Right. I mean, I can only imagine that what they're doing is they're trying to wait as long as they can so they can make as low of an offer as they possibly can, and the players are kind of like fine, like whatever. And my suspicion is that it's going to be in the 25 to 35% range, which I don't know. I don't know if it's not really for me to say if that's enough or not. The players will have to sort of decide that. But potentially that's a lot of money. Let's just say it's 25% of potential future earnings. If anyone gets out of the group stage, that's another $2.5 million that would be coming into the pockets of the players, which is 2.5 times what they're already getting. So that's a pretty big boost. I mean, that's the thing is there is a fair amount of money from a player perspective. I just don't know. I don't think I understand from a owner perspective. This is not an outrageous amount of money.
No, it's not.
These are way within the realms of losses that most teams are incurring over the course of a year anyway. So what are we fighting over exactly? It's just very baffling.
It is, and especially because you do want your players motivated for this sort of situation. Now, I was just talking to somebody that works within League IMX, and he was telling me, look, here, when it comes to the players' contracts, a lot of it is bonuses based on how you do in La Liguilla, right? And how you do based on the playoff structure and how many games you win. So you know that's going to help the product on the field. So the fact that they're basically saying, look, you're going to get $1 million, whether you do good or bad, just seems counterproductive. That's like I told you yesterday, me bringing somebody in to do my bathroom and saying, look, man, here's a check for $2,000. I don't care what it looks like. Just give it back to me with something in it and you'll get this money. It just makes no sense.
So I think you mentioned Liga MX, and I think that maybe this is a clue as to what might be happening. Is my understanding of the way that the CONCACAF Champions Cup bonus came about was Liga MX basically made the same deal with their players, and MLS didn't want to be in a situation where there was more money on the line for the Liga MX players than there was for the MLS players, and so that's basically I think they basically matched the offer that Liga MX. So as of right now, I don't think Liga MX has guaranteed anything to their players.
That is accurate.
But I suspect that might change, and MLS might be waiting to see what that change is, because they don't want to be in a situation where it's drastically different. I'm sure the worst case scenario for the league is they're paying MLS players more than what Liga MX is getting.
Right.
But I think they also want to be careful not to be in a situation where they are all of a sudden feeling like they need to match Liga MX, because that is one of the things that's in the CBA indirectly, is an expectation that for these tournaments where they're competing in the same tournament, that they're basically matched up, and it's actually spelled out literally that way in the Leagues Cup bonuses. It spells out one payment structure unless Liga MX is getting more, and then they have to match that. So that, I suppose, for better or for worse, that might be what they're doing. But also, wouldn't it make sense for MLS to just say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why were they hiding the ball on this? That's so weird.
And it all goes back to how we started this show, and it is that this should have been the conversations months ago, right?
Exactly.
At the very least. And we would be a lot further along, right?
If MLS came to the players and just said, look, we understand that we're going to have to change this, but we need to we want to make it equitable with Liga MX because that's the way we've set this up. We need to wait on what they're doing. And then we would be in a different place right now. And we would at least everyone would be on the same page of like, why are we doing this? But instead we're here guessing and speculating, and it's probably counterproductive. Anything else on the, go ahead.
I know we're getting ready to finish. So what I would say, and the way I would like to conclude this portion of the segment is, these players have every right to at least want to have the conversation, because I've heard a lot of people with the thought process that these players should be just like, fair ponies, and they should just be able to just dance for me to be entertained, and they should just be happy that they get to play sports for money. And that, to me, is irrational, and I think that you're a bad person if you think that way. And maybe you're just ignorant, and I don't mean ignorant as like something
it's like a debate as old as time, but it never goes away.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that they have every right to bring up. And if you have any doubts, the reason why this team got here was because of the effort they put in 2022 to win that CONCACAF
and they are still the
Champions
only team
League
that qualified by winning Champions Cup from MLS.
JP still has a piece of his ACL in Lumen Field that he left in the field for this team to get there.
Right.
Obed Vargas was a kid working his body like a grown man trying to get there. Yeber Gomez Andrade played with more pains and aches than Steve McNair in that entire tournament.
Yeah.
Christian Roldan played every position. He was the assist leader in that one. I mean, Stephen Fry, he was everywhere, putting his body on the line. So these players earned that spot. And just, I want to bring that context and, call me, apologetic or whatever it is that you have that comment. I just want to bring the context to contrast anything that people think in regards to how easy it is or how good these players have it, and that they should just shut up and play, like Stefan Fry said yesterday.
Yeah, it's been kind of annoying. And is there anything else on the actual Club World Cup that we want to get into? Because otherwise we can probably put a pin in this conversation, move into some of the other stuff around the team. But anything else that you want to talk about Club World Cup?
No, I do not. The training facilities were announced.
They did announce the training facilities, and River Plate is going to be training here along with the Sounders.
Correct.
The teams that are training in the area, interestingly enough, are not the teams that are in the Sounders group, but they're in the group that will be playing some more games here. So Inter Milan is going to be training at VMAC, the Seahawks training center, or they're going to split there with training in LA. And then Irwa Red Diamonds are beginning training at the University of Portland. And so each River, Inter, and Irwa all are going to play 2 games here each. Obviously not against the Sounders, but that's an interesting little... I would imagine people are going to be pretty excited about River. I don't know if they're going to actually be able to come out here or not.
Yeah, that's been a problem for sure. But, it is interesting, just in case, people had not read the story that's on Sounder at Heart. I did want to go ahead and mention that it is news because there was a big sense, and as someone that's been, talking directly to a lot of media in Argentina, they had been told, or there was a speculation that they'd be training at Starfire, and so that is obviously not the case here. So, for what it's worth, I thought that was interesting this week.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to talk about some of the developments in, I don't know, we'll call it Poopgate.
I like that. That's got to be a hashtag.
Yeah, exactly. As well as sort of some updates around the Sounders. You're listening to Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. We are doing What We Learned This Week with Niko. We're here at Long Acres. One more thing I forgot to mention about the Club World Cup before we move on to the Sounder stuff is we've seen more movement in terms of the ticketing. Not only was there another price reduction, not for every game, but for the Botafogo game, and then for, I think, at least the Irwa River game that's here. Prices are getting to be the point of, like, I don't know, I'm going to say cheap, but I mean, you can get into the River Irwa game right now for $25, which is,
that's awesome.
Pretty cheap. And you can get good seats for like $50-$60. The Botafogo game is a little bit more expensive. I think the get-in price is closer to $40, but you can get good seats for $70-$80. But what's more interesting is that this week the tickets were finally released, so people finally had them in their Ticketmaster wallets or whatever. And one of the things that happened was that if you bought tickets in the West Side 300s, apparently you've been moved into the east side 100 and 200 sections. So theoretically, they are better seats, but a lot of people bought seats with friends or with associates, or they like the seats that some of those seats in the 300s are perfectly fine. And so they've been moved without any notification or without any notice, or they certainly weren't asked if it was okay. And I guess the idea is they just want to make it look as full as possible on TV. And then I guess there's some element also of this is sort of like a make good gesture for prices for people that paid really expensive prices, and so I'm guessing they're getting comparably priced seats at a lower section. Now, one of the other things that's interesting is that if you bought tickets through the Club Fan program that FIFA was actually running, you apparently got a partial refund.
Oh, nice!
So that is actually pretty cool. But the thing about them moving people without telling them is pretty sketchy. I'm sure some people were thrilled, but I know I've heard from a few people that were like, no, I wanted those seats. They were like aisle seats, or they were relatively low on the 300s, and now I'm in the back section of the 100s or whatever.
I'd hope that they would at least keep people in a row, because I know that for me, sometimes I'll be like, hey man, I'm gonna buy these 3 with the family. You get your family right next to me. And if you're not keeping that in mind and you're just moving people around, it'd suck to watch it with your friends all the way
Although
across
I suppose people can just go back up to the 300s.
Yeah, just go sit up there. Hey man, I'm just gonna go up there, all right? That's what I bought.
I mean, it just kind of speaks to kind of the way this tournament is being. I just think FIFA really, really overestimated what the demand was, especially for like the non-marquee teams. I mean, there's some of these games that are between like a South African team and a random European team that have like almost no ticket sale. Like it's just some of these games are not attractive to the casual fan. Most of these games, not. I mean, frankly, most of these games are just not that attractive to the casual fan.
No.
And I don't know how much traveling support is actually going to be coming through. It'll be, because River is, I would presumably, a team that usually gets pretty good traveling support. I haven't really heard anything one or the other. I guess my understanding is basically Boca Juniors, Real Madrid, and to a lesser degree the Sounders are like really the only tickets that are selling very well.
Yep, yeah, and that was surprising to me because I've heard the same about tickets at Hard Rock, where
even that season, the opening game is not selling very well.
Which is crazy because sometimes Messi just gets a house full just for a regular game, but whether it's the way, like we've been mentioning consistently, the way that it was marketed, the way that it's been moving, it's just not selling well.
Yeah, the way it's been marketed has been very off to me because it's just like I think FIFA just assumed if we call it the Club World Cup, everyone will know that it is. And it's like, what do you mean no one knows what it is? Because it hasn't really existed before. And,
nope.
And to the degree it did exist, it was not this big tournament. It was a very much sideshow, essentially an exhibition.
It was.
And so no one comes, and it's never been in the United States before, so I don't even know how much awareness people had of it. So I guess you live and learn, but it's kind of a shame that, because we really should be talking about full stadiums and all this kind of stuff, and I don't know if we're going to have any full stadiums.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. If they're bringing people down from the 300s to the 200s, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign, man.
Not a good sign. All right, well, we did have some news around the Sounders. The first big one is kind of this, like I said, I'm tongue-in-cheek calling it Poopgate with the Whitecaps, but basically they came back from Mexico and like half their plane had gastrointestinal issues. Now it looks like that is something that happened after the game, so it may not have actually impacted their was not to blame for their 5-0 loss to Cruz Azul, in which they took 0 shots. Not a great showing. But
they were awful that game.
Yeah, but they now have. They were already missing 9 players for international duty. That took their, I believe I counted up, they only had, that left them with 14 outfield players. And we don't know how it breaks down in terms of who's still sick, but they were back out training today, still limited. They're not exactly brimming with confidence about their ability to play this game, but the Sounders, from what we understand, have not heard anything about the possibility of it being canceled. So as far as we know, the game's happening.
And the game, I foresee that it will happen, even if they have to bring up players in some sort of way or fashion. although it is unfortunate, I think Brian hit the nail on the head when talking about the subject, because he said, look, that makes them dangerous, because they're going to have an excuse of not just the fact that they were just playing a big tournament and the amount of absences, which to my understanding is 7 starters that they're missing for that particular game.
Those are the Whitecaps players.
Whitecaps
for international.
For international duty.
Right, they were missing 7. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's 9 overall, 7 that are starters, and so that's pretty big. So they're kind of in a no-win situation where sometimes that's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, the Sounders famously, went to Austin in 2021 and used a lineup that was 5 teenagers and a bunch of other kind of reserves, and Raul Ruiz, and they won that game. And I would imagine the Whitecaps this is going to be a game in Vancouver, so they have their home field advantage. It's a hard game to prepare for, and that was sort of the message that Brian was preaching today. It was, we cannot take this for granted. These are still professional soccer players. We don't have tape really on these guys. We don't know their tendencies. They could come out and surprise us, and we have to just be the better team. We can't get over prepared for this game, and we sort of have to because the reality is the Sounders probably are going to have the talent advantage at every spot on the field.
Yep. And to that, it's the fact that the players have to be up for the game right away. If there's something that I thought was lackluster about the Minnesota game here at home, they just came in so flat. And the intensity wasn't there, the tempo wasn't there. At BC plays that, I have a friend that lives in Vancouver, and he's told me that the rallies before the game have increased, obviously, because how good they've been. The atmosphere has been crazy.
It can get pretty loud.
It get pretty loud.
I have to say, when BC Place gets rolling, I really like BC Place as a venue. I know players hate it because the turf sucks, but I think it's a fun venue to go watch a game.
And the turf's another thing. Brian Smith talked about Ryan Kent and having to get used to a lot of things, and that's maybe some of the slowing down that he's had in terms of his overall performances. Maybe not as flashy, not as exciting as it once looked when he was coming off the bench. And one of those things is the turf. So it's still going to be a difficult game to be honest. But Seattle also had they have some question marks.
They do, and we may as well get into those. So today, Brian Schmetzer confirmed that Jordan Morris is out for this game. He had what he termed a setback. We noticed yesterday at training that he brought himself off. It looks like it's a re-aggravation of his hamstring injury. We don't know how serious it is. Brian seemed to not make it sound like super serious, but he said he was out for the Whitecaps game, and he basically said he's questionable for the entire Club World Cup because he's basically said we're not going to rush him back. We're going to make the decision that makes the most sense for the long term. And as much as Jordan might want to play and as much as we want to perform well in the Club World Cup, we aren't going to risk him playing in one of these games if it means that he might not be available for a longer period during the season. That's a blow to the Sounders.
It's a blow. I mean, I think everybody was excited to just see him back. You and I, what we learned this week is that he looked good. I mean, early this week, he looked good. Yesterday, before that setback, he looked good. He was physically ready. He seemed like he was just aching at the moment to just get back. And the way he came off and the body language and the frustration just told you enough. And that's why we asked about it today. And it is a blow because what you have with Jordan Morris, as much as people want to overreact to a lot of things, he's still the best
the
player.
Highest upside number 9
exactly.
the Sounders have.
100%.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And the thing is, he's been good this year. I think people have forgotten. I mean, because he's missed so much time, I think we've forgotten that he's got 3 goals in like 4 games. He's been good this year. So it's not like he's been passed by for any reason other than he's just not been healthy.
Yeah, I feel like people are just all about short memory. Like, what have you done for me lately?
Ryan
all
Kent
the
should
time.
be a DP.
And
now
all
we
of a
should
sudden
cut him.
No, just let him go. And then Musovski, let's ship him anywhere. I don't care where it is. He could barely cut it in USL, I heard, from people. And now all of a sudden he's the guy. So I don't know.
So anyway, it does look like Jesus Ferreira is going to get the start, at least from what we've seen so far. We haven't seen the official starting lineup, but that, I would say, based on everything we saw, that looks like it's going to happen. I can imagine that doesn't sit real great with Danny Musovski, who I think probably feels like he lost his spot due to not even like serious injury, just like missing a game, and Ferreira coming in and doing okay. And I think Brian is sort of trying to balance two things. One is keeping Danny Musovski's motivation and rewarding his performance, but also understanding that Jesus Ferreira probably offers you the longer term upside.
Absolutely.
And if you can get him going as a number 9, that's probably more important than any short term games you can get from Musovski, who, let's be honest, his form he has not just come back and continued his form. He's gotten 90 minutes or so in the 2 games that since his last goal. And I mean, that's not a lot of time, but he hasn't been super goal dangerous in those games. I still think, I think I might feel a little bit better about him in the short term, but I also understand the reasoning why Ferreira might be getting the start.
No, and I mean, if you've been listening to what you've learned this week all season, that's something that we've been saying, is that overall the potential there between him and Musovski, you're going to have to give it to Ferreira. Now, as much as we do like the productivity and stuff, I feel like Brian, he gave some context in terms of 2 things. One, he said, I've had to have some tough conversations about playing and not playing. I'm guessing one of those players he referred to was Danny Musovski. Yeah. And then he also said that he called it plateaued. Yeah. He kind of just plateaued in terms of his form. And, that's just the way of that position. Unfortunately, we've seen the good and bad when it comes to that. So overall, to the injuries, it's a blow, because now I
think what's so frustrating is that they were already obviously at a disadvantage going into the Club World Cup. Mm-hmm. But you take away Morris, we don't know if Yamar or Kim are going to be available, but let's assume they're not available, at least for the Botafogo game. This is already a team who is playing at a talent deficit, and now they're missing 3 potential starters, probably their best defender and maybe their best offensive player. That sucks.
This is what I've heard on background. And as somebody that I do take my time when I'm walking towards the field sometimes, you get to talk to players and stuff. Kim, first of all, nicest guy. Kim's up to me. He thinks he's gotten so much better. He feels really positive, in terms of like his demeanor. Yeah. But then the workout that he went out and did tells me that he's not going to be ready. I mean, he barely touched the ball. Oh, he barely touched the ball. Now on the other end, Yamar Gomez Andrade has kind of amplified his workout. I feel like it's probably driven by Yamar, because he's such a guy that
you read between the lines of what Brian was saying in the post-training today. It sounds like Yamar is pushing hard to play. Like, he really wants to get on the field, and I think
he's got to tame it.
And Brian is basically saying, look, I appreciate that you want to play, but if you're not fit, you're not fit.
100%. And look, that is an honestly tough conversation to have, because you do got to protect the player from himself. We've talked about this before. You got to protect the player from himself, and the player's always going to be upset about it because he feels like he's ready. He wants to be out there. But
I know my body better.
But the signs are the signs. And again, nobody wants to miss out a game against PSG. When in the world are you going to be able to say that again to your kids?
This is the biggest stage that most of these players will ever be on, and I can't blame any of them for saying, let me get out there. I'm my own boss. If I get hurt again, that's on me. But the thing is, it's not.
No, that's
the coach's job, is to be the Jiminy Cricket and say, you can't do that.
Absolutely. And
I can't put you out there in good conscience.
And as much as Yamar's, I think, physical attributes have played well in his benefit when it comes to this situation, because he's been able to come back from injuries more rapidly than most, you still want to make sure that you have to take into consideration that maybe this time it's not just him feeling his body right, but his mind telling him that he's right when he's really not.
So I guess what we're saying is we won't know for certain whether or not they're fit until they're on the field. Yeah. And we kind of have, and I hate the appeal to authority argument, but when it comes to an injury, I kind of feel like you kind of just got to trust the coaches and the physios, and if they say a guy's not ready, you don't play them, and if they say they're ready, you hope that they are. And
just to add on, I just realized how funny this was coming off of my mind, that when it comes to the center back position, when it rains, it pours. I was kind of excited when I heard Brian said that Stu Hawkins was back.
And then in the
next sentence, he's like, yeah, he had a quad thing that he's feeling. So for everybody, another thing that we learned is that apparently Stu Hawkins has a quad injury now.
And he said he was questionable. He said he might be able to play for Whitecaps, so it doesn't sound like it's super serious, but he came back as injured. He came back with an injury from national team camp.
So it'll be Jackson and Bell, and he said that Jackson, he's hoping that he goes 90 on the bench. I don't really know what else they're going to have, to be honest, because he didn't say we're bringing up Leo. He said we thought about it.
Yeah, but although the thing with Leo, not that this is important at this point.
You mentioned
my understanding with the Leo thing is that it's not as simple as being able to bring him up, because he's in the interesting part of the roster where he's on a full season loan to Tacoma Defiance, and my understanding is that the only way that he can be called up is for a hardship or an extreme hardship call up, which is not based on positional depth. It's based on the whole roster. So they would have to be down to like 15 healthy players, which I haven't done the math, but I don't think they're close to being at 15 players. He did mention that Cody Baker could get some time. He has previously mentioned that Nuhu can play center back. Yeah. But it's going to be thin at center back. Now, compared to the Whitecaps, that's not much of an excuse.
Nope.
Right. And one of the other, I do wonder what his conversations are like with Kalani Kosarienzi, who had another really outstanding game against Minnesota. Yep. It wasn't just the goal. He was just probably the Sounders' most dynamic player consistently in the game. And he is consistently doing that stuff. I mean, you look at his rate stats, which is like his how he's performing on a per 90 basis. He's like one of the best fullbacks in the league right now. Now, I'm sure that would equal out over a longer period of time, but he looks like a really dynamic player who I think the Sounders need to be finding ways to get on the field.
And I think they played him at center mid at the end of that game, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe you're right.
They brought in Reed on the left side, and it was Alex Still on the right, and it was Manungu higher up the field, and he pushed inside. So he's a guy that's just such a spark plug and such a physical guy, and not just that, but I feel like technically he's done very well.
And this is on the heels of him being a very good defensive player against San Diego to help close out that game.
So it's interesting. He's going to be a guy that, I think he's going to get a lot more play time. You're hoping that, we don't put JP in the freezer, though. I've been very adamant about making sure that he is in rhythm. And I feel like he helps a lot of distribution from the back end. And I think you're just going to have to rotate it. But in this particular one, you probably put your best team out there. And that includes, obviously, Obed and Christian. But do the Sounders, are they expected to win? Do they have the need that this has got to be 3 points in your opinion?
Absolutely. I think you go into this game and anything less than 3 points is going to be hard to swallow.
I would agree.
And I think that you can sort of use that as a buffer of, okay, we thought we should, because I think the Minnesota game felt like a game they should win. You can understand if they didn't, but you can really even that out if you can get this Whitecaps win, because I think on paper the Whitecaps game was always going to be tougher. Although, I guess we always knew they were going to be shorthanded, but these are 3 points they need to get.
Right. I would absolutely agree. And I don't say that a lot, but when I do, I really mean it.
Yeah, especially for road games.
I think this road game is a must-win, is a big one. It kind of puts you in a different state of mind moving into a small break and then into the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
You just need to have this game. Everything is on your side to win it. I think that this has to be another big Jesus Ferreira game. I've put that on him before, and he did okay against Dallas. But in this one, for me, that's another big game for Jesus to contribute, to be dangerous, to be a lot more aggressive towards goal. Brian Kent's another guy that I feel like he's looking for a get-right game.
And this is a good opportunity.
This is a good opportunity for him.
I would agree with all of that. Normally, we would go through the Whitecaps roster and say, what are the players that you're watching? I'm not going to do that because I don't know who's going to be available.
No, just to make sure that you know that I did do my homework. I definitely went back and I asked Brian about this. I was looking for a moment in time where they rotated heavily, but even when they did, it was against Minnesota, and it was an awful first half. There was a lot of young players in their midfield specifically, and it wasn't until Berhalter came in, Vite came in, that they actually won the game at the end. So all in all,
they tied that game 0-0.
No, they won that game 3-1 against Minnesota. This is way back. This is like before
earlier in the season.
Earlier in the season.
You're not talking about right for. Oh, no. I thought you were talking about the game against them right before the Champions Cup final.
No, this is the only game that I could find going back 10 games in which you didn't have Cubas, you didn't have Vite, and you didn't have White. Those were the three players that I was looking for. Jalen Nelson was still part of that squad, which he's not going to be available for this one. But I just thought that if I'm going to go as far as I can, I'm going to try to find that out. And that was a specific game. The team looked bleak without those players. So Seattle, quite honestly, it's all on them. I think I could see them pressuring pretty high. I could see them wanting to be the protagonist right off the bat. I think that's the right idea. And it's all about execution. It's all about making plays. It's all about making sure that the runs are being made into the box and knowing that you are the better team out there, and you got to prove it on.
They have to. I would say that's the thing. They really have to come into that mindset of we are the better team. We need to boss this game. We need to control the tempo. We need to control the possession, and we need to create scoring chances. Most importantly, because that is a thing that the Sounders have. You know, they did against Minnesota a little bit. They dominated possession. They dictated sort of the terms of the game, but when it came to actually creating chances, they really struggled to do that until Minnesota scored first, and then at that point it was, you know, kind of a different game. But
yeah, and then in terms of just overall players, I mean, I think Daniel Rios is someone that has been very productive. He's a heavy contributor for the team. He could play out wide. He could play the 9. I thought Priso had a pretty good game there against Minnesota. And as far as I know, Blackman is going to be there as well.
Really?
Because he's not going to get called up anywhere. Okay. So he's going to be one guy that he's going to be important for Vancouver in terms of what they do defensively. Takaoka is also another guy that I feel like he's a goalkeeper. He helps with distribution. He's one of the guys that gets them going quick from point A to point C in terms of just let's get the ball forward. So Seattle will have to look into some of the things that they've struggled at times with LAFC when they play Lloris. Well, whenever there's a corner kick or there's a set piece and the goalkeeper has it, you have to be ready for that ball to come behind you. With the center back, depth stuff and how they're going to play it out, I think like that's something where Vancouver is going to try to attack is how quickly can we turn them around, how quickly can we get in transition, and that's something they might do with this younger team that you'll see on Sunday.
Well, that's probably a good place to wrap this up. Niko, thank you again for doing this. You can follow Niko on Blue Sky at El Rolo PNW. El Rolo NW. El Rolo NW. Blew it.
I know, okay.
Pulso Sports on YouTube, which we're going to be probably working together a little bit more on that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of fun thing to be watching. Of course, Soccer Down Here. You're on Lobbing Scorchers. Thank you again for doing this, Niko.
Oh, man. Happy to be here. It's a lot of information today, so I'm hoping the audience really enjoys it.
This is an info-packed episode.
It was, man. And, keep the commentary going. I like to see it. I've seen it go down a little bit. So we like to hear the comments, good or bad. Let me know. Hit me up. You guys got questions. You guys want us to integrate things into the show, man. I'm all ears, man. So appreciate all your support. Thank you, Jeremiah, for always being here, promptly getting stuff ready. Sometimes we deal with some things, technical issues, and we make it happen. So thank you, man.
All right. Well, I'm Jeremiah Shan signing off for No Sarietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, and we will catch you next time.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party.
I feel a lot better than Bob.